In today's show, the Blazers win by losing in a tank-off for the ages against OKC. And it's mock draft season. We look at the latest NBA mock drafts to see who the Blazers might take in this June's draft. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. In today's show, we're going to be talking about the Blazers' loss that was really a win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll look ahead to the latest round of mock drafts. It's that time of year. We are less than just 87 days away, 86 as you hear this, from the NBA draft. It's time to start getting into NBA draft mode for a team set to maybe have two and certainly aggressively chasing after one lottery pick. And then we'll close the show with a request from a listener, a brief history of Trailblazers draft picks, what they've done over the last decade in the draft. It's not a perfect science, but it is a fun way to look back and remember what they've done and a sense of where you get good players and all of that. So that's what we'll do. A little bit of now, a little bit of the future, and a little bit of the past. Let's start with our fastest recap in the West. The Blazers lose 134-131 at home to the Oklahoma City Thunder. This was quite an affair. Both teams had just 8 players available by tip-off. The real news of this one is that the Blazers only had 8 players, and I'll talk about the news in a second, but they made some announcements about guys done for the year and guys potentially done for the year, et cetera, et cetera. But coming into tonight without Trendon Watford, who was hurt, and without Greg Brown, who had a corneal abrasion, he basically got poked in the eye and has his eyeball is messed up, couldn't play. The Blazers were down to 8 players. So OKC said, y'all want to lose? Y'all want to lose? We can lose with the best of them. Darius Bazley, who was doubtful coming into the game, was ruled out and didn't play. And then prior to tip-off, Tre Mann, who was absolutely going to be the best player in this game, I think. He was going to be the best player on the floor in this game. The Thunder ruled out Tre Mann about an hour before tip-off, and that was that. Both teams with just 8 available bodies in this one. And of course, in a game with 8 available bodies, it went to overtime. This was, for my money, pretty entertaining. A close game that came right down to it. And then after the Blazers took a little bit of a lead heading into the fourth quarter, OKC stormed back. Isaiah Roby hit a 3-pointer in the closing moments of regulation to force overtime, and the Blazers could not score at the end of the fourth quarter. The game went to OT. Even went back and forth in overtime, but it came down to it. The Blazers got the ball with 10 seconds left, down 3, and they didn't have any timeouts, and they decided to go for it too. Brandon Williams drove the paint quickly. They tried to get a quick 2. With no timeout, there's no such thing as a quick 2. A quick 2 is a loss. Drew Eubanks dunks home the follow. Blazers give up a 3-pointer, or give up a quick lay-in to go down by 3, and then they need a 3-pointer to tie with just seconds left, and they kind of botch the inbound pass. Again, no timeouts, can't advance the ball, can't set it up. Brandon Williams trying to set it up. CJ Ellaby caught the inbounds pass 94 feet from the rim. They threw it in literally 1 foot, shorter than you would normally, and they don't get a real shot off as time expires, and they lose 134-131. That's your fastest recap in the West. Fun stat lines across the board in this one. Drew Eubanks, 27 points, 14 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. He was 12 of 14 from the floor. Hook shot god. The Shack of Troutdale was just floating in righty hooks. My man can only shoot hooks really with his right hand, but he is money with the right-handed hook. He is 27, 14, 3, and 2. For Drew Eubanks, 25 from Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams had a couple games. Last game was fine, but he had a couple games in a row where he was really struggling a little bit. Just could not get his shot to fall. Wasn't super efficient from 2, but hit 5 of 8 threes. Finished with 25 points and 12 assists. I don't think that the Blazers' situation is particularly fun or good for anyone. Like this, they're losing to lose, and it's fine. But I think Drew Eubanks has proved that he could be a backup or a third center in the league, and I think Brandon Williams has proven he can be a backup in the NBA. He might just be straight up good. It's hard to judge in this with the context and all these things, but like Brandon Williams looks just straight up playable and solid. 25 and 12. He deserves. He'll be on a 2-way contract next year. He deserves another and longer look. Ben McLemore, 28 points off the bench and hit 8 threes, which is a bummer because earlier this year on a show, I said the Blazers will never lose when Ben McLemore hits 8 threes. He hit 8 threes one game earlier this year, and I made that quip, and then here they are losing when Ben McLemore had 8 threes. And in part is because Isaiah Roby had 30 points for the Thunder. His three tied it, sent it to OT, and he had a couple buckets late in OT. Like, he was great. He was the best player on the floor in overtime. He finished with 30 and 8 boards, 28 from Aaron Wiggins, 23 from Teo Maladon to go with 10 boards and 5 assists. Alexei Pokusevski just does a lot of stuff at a speed that is hard to comprehend. He is a slow-moving guy who looks like he's kind of floating out there, but he weighs 17 pounds and he's 7 feet tall. 11 points, 8 boards, 11 assists for Poku. Olivier Sarr had 12 points off the bench for OKC. Not a particularly impressive stat line, but I thought his size was important for OKC. That's what you need to know about that game. We don't really need to go much deeper than that. Y'all get it. Important game to lose. OKC is really bad, and they held their folks out. They've announced that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and rookie Josh Giddey are out for the year, and that's what it really was on this fine Monday. It was a time for teams to announce that dudes are done for the year, and the Blazers are among those teams. Anfernee Simons, this isn't a surprise, no surprise. Anfernee Simons done for the year. Jusuf Nurkic done for the year. The Blazers announced both today in a press release. And Eric Bledsoe, who we've never seen, he got a PRP injection. That is a plasma or platelet-rich plasma injection. Basically, take some blood out, shake it around a little bit, get some more white blood cells in there, and put it back in your in his case, lower leg. I assume his Achilles. He's done for the year. We'll probably never see Eric Bledsoe in a Blazer jersey. I'm willing to wager never see Eric Bledsoe in a Blazer jersey, although he's under contract for next season, partially guaranteed at $3.4 million. And if he's on the team, he'll be making $19 million as at least an interesting backup, but I don't think he'll ever play. Those three done for the year. What the Blazers did announce, and they actually led the press release with this because lead with positivity, baby, is that Didi Louzada, the young guard that the Blazers acquired in the CJ McCollum trade from the New Orleans Pelicans, they think he'll play. They anticipate he will return to the court. He hurt his meniscus, towards meniscus in the end of January, and then had surgery and missed some time, and now he's basically going to be 8 weeks removed from it by the time he returns. I think it's important just to see what you get from Didi. I mean, I don't think 4 games is really going to make any difference, but I think it's for the Blazers heading into next season, you might as well see him in a real live game setting. There's nothing to lose but victories, and they've done a really good job of losing games, and I don't think Didi's going to be good enough to really change much here. I think the interesting news from this Blazers press release that they put out today was that Josh Hart is going to be reevaluated in a week. Now, here's my read on that. Josh Hart's going to be reevaluated in a week, and they're going to say Josh Hart's season is done. They just didn't want to announce 4 guys all at once. Their seasons were over, and I think Josh Hart gets the short straw. Like, oh yeah, we'll check his knee out. He's been out the shortest amount of time. We'll check his knee out in a week, and we'll find out he's done. I cannot imagine a scenario where Josh Hart plays basketball again this season. I cannot imagine. It would be very bizarre because when he played, he was extremely good, and the Blazers have to avoid having good players on the court. It's extremely important for them to continue to lose. Speaking of losing, like quick whip around the league, yesterday's show, Monday's show, I recorded it before the Pelicans and Lakers played. The Lakers took a 23-point first half lead. They led by 20 at halftime, and they completely botched it because they are an unserious franchise. An unserious franchise that does not deserve our respect. The Lakers shouldn't make the play, and they do not deserve to play any postseason games. Get them fully the hell up on out of here. They stink. They stink. No Anthony Davis. LeBron James hurt his ankle. He was awesome and hit 5 threes in the first half, and then he looked slow in the second half. And Russell Westbrook continues to be a bizarre fit on that team, and they stink. They blew a 23-point lead. Trey Murphy went nuts, Pels rookie, in the second half, and the Pelicans move into 9th place. Coupled that with the Spurs winning today, this evening, on Monday evening, the San Antonio Spurs are a half game behind the Lakers for the 10th spot and the final play-in spot in the playoffs. Get the Lakers out of here. Get them out. Get them out. The Sunday was going to be the game that you said, okay, here's why you still have faith in the Lakers beating the Pelicans and the Blazers holding on to their pick. Because when you get into a serious game, you have LeBron James. There's no back-to-backs in the play-in round, no back-to-backs in postseason basketball. You're going to get LeBron, one of the best players to ever play this game, for my money, the best player I've ever seen play basketball. You're going to get him in a single elimination game that's going to matter, and then they blew a 23-point lead. Just an indefensible loss by the Lakers. Get them fully the hell up on out of here. Let's let DeJounte Murray and Lonnie Walker and Jakob Poeltl and Keldon Johnson handle this one, because the Lakers cannot be trusted. Pels look good. Brandon Ingram came back and had 26. Looks good. That's bad news for the Blazers. Here's some good news, though. Paul George, you may remember him from being a pretty good player, plays for the Clippers. He has been upgraded to questionable. He's been out forever. Questionable means he's coming back. He's going to play later this week. You need the Clippers to be good, and you need them to be ready to beat the Pelicans in the play-in, because I do not think I think because of the way Sunday went with the Lakers, I think the Pels are in the driver's seat. They play the Lakers one more time. They're still going to get 2 games against. They're going to get a game against the Blazers this week. I think it's very likely that it's San Antonio, New Orleans in that first play-in game, and then it's the loser of Minnesota and LA. You want as many talented teams as possible between the Pelicans and the playoffs. And Paul George coming back and rooting for the Spurs, a much more serious franchise to be there, is better for the Blazers. That's your news. So no Ant and Nurk for the rest of the season, not a surprise. Can't imagine Josh plays. Maybe see Didi Louzada in a little bit, and then you got your rooting news. You're always rooting against the Pels, but Brandon Ingram back, CJ back. They're going to be good, and we will see them Wednesday. They come to Portland Wednesday. CJ McCollum's return. Going to be a fun one. I will be there, and maybe you will be too if you're listening and able to do so. But it isn't basketball. The basketball games don't matter as much for the Blazers right now. They lost a game and it didn't matter. It's about what's next. That's what I want to talk about in the second segment, is what's next for this team. And that's mock draft stuff. A bunch of the larger outlets released their mock drafts in the last couple days, and I've rounded up some good ones, and we'll talk about some prospects that folks are targeting if the Blazers end up with potentially 2 picks, one of those being from the Pelicans, which is why we are so invested in them losing here on this show. But before we get there, I want to tell you about NBA Top Shot. It is the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. And it's a way to connect with passionate community of NBA fans across the globe, and build your collection with your favorite moments of NBA history. NBA Top Shot is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading cards, part stock market, part fantasy sports, with a built-in loyalty program. NBA Top Shot has evolved trading cards and made it easier to buy, sell, and trade by removing the hassle of card grading, of shoe boxes, of binders, of saving them in little sleeves and all that stuff. So here's what you do. You can purchase a unique clip of your favorite NBA highlight. And you might be asking, why would I buy something that I could watch on YouTube for free? And here's why. Because it's not just watching a highlight, it's about having ownership in the stock market of the NBA's greatest moments. And owning NBA Top Shots can get you access to unbuyable once-in-a-lifetime experiences. For example, last year, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to Phoenix for Game 5 of the NBA Finals just for having Phoenix Suns moments in their collection. The following week, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to New York for the NBA Draft, and these collectors got to have dinner with 4 future first-round picks the night before they were drafted and play basketball, including Knicks rookie Obi Toppin. So if you sign up for Top Shop today, the best way to get started is to get yourself a starter pack. You can pull a moment of a superstar like LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Damian Lillard, or star rookies like Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, or Greg Brown III. That'll cost you $9 to get started with one of those starter packs. So head on over to lockedon.nbatopshot.com to start building your collection today. Today's show is also brought to you by Truebill. It's the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, you don't want, or that you simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill is here to make it incredibly simple. You just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. You're paying for a service. It's either going to be one click and the subscription is done. If it's more than one click, you are paying someone to do the clicking for you. I use Truebill and in under 15 minutes, I had an eyeball on all of my subscriptions, digital subscriptions, right there in the app. Super easy to use, super simple. Get your eyeballs on what you are paying for and what you don't want to pay for and start saving money. So don't fall for those subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. That's truebill.com/lockedonnba. All right. It's mock draft season, y'all. Talked about the Blazers news. Talked about a great loss to OKC. Just a phenomenal loss. Great work. For those of you rooting for losses, they did it. They even did it in overtime while winning in the final seconds of the fourth quarter. A magical loss. Quite frankly, an entertaining basketball game. But enough about basketball games. Let's look to the future. Like I said at the top of the show, we are less than 90 days from the NBA draft. We don't know exactly where the Blazers are going to be picking, but they're going to have their own draft pick. They are not going to make the playoffs. You do not need to worry about that. And if the Pelicans miss the playoffs, they will have likely a pick that falls somewhere between 9 and 11. If the Pelicans miss the playoffs, there's a 78% chance that pick falls between 9 and 11. It can't fall any lower. It's not going to fall any lower than 9 just because of the way the lottery odds work, and it's very unlikely. It would take several teams jumping into the top 4 for it to fall outside of 11. So the most likely scenarios of the Blazers have something like the 6th pick, the 7th pick, and the 9th pick. So that puts them in sort of that mid-lottery range. And without sort of talking about all the other scenarios, if they trade, if they move up and all those things, I looked at some of the mock drafts from people I trust and people I know, who have kind of mapped out what Blazers having 2 lottery selections in that position might look like. So without further ado, let's get into them. ESPN, they put this behind a paywall now, so you all might not have it, but Jonathan Givony and Mike Schmitz do a really good job on draft stuff. They're the guys who used to be at Draft Express, formerly a free service, but they do a really good work on ESPN. They get eyeballs on guys. They're talking to executives. Jonathan Givony, really, he has it dialed. Certainly I'm a big believer in ESPN's coverage. I think they do a really good job. And ESPN has the Blazers making 2 selections. It's kind of like they have it based on the standings as of when they wrote it. Quite frankly, those standings, since I read it this morning, have changed this evening. This is Tuesday, March 29th show, and I'm recording this on the evening of March 28th. So instead of like saying at number whatever, we'll just say who they pick, and we'll talk about who they are. But with the Blazers' first pick, ESPN has them taking Shaedon Sharpe, 6'6" guard from Kentucky. Sharpe was a 5-star recruit, kind of consensus, one of the top recruits in the country, and that did not play at Kentucky this year. I have watched maybe a 12-minute highlight video of Shaedon Sharpe, as much as I've seen him. He didn't miss any shots in that one. But, from what I've read about him, really good athlete, maybe potential to play 1, 2, and 3, like maybe be able to scale up and eventually play small forward, but certainly like a 1-2 type, a guy who can score off the dribble, has some real pull-up ability, and is a really good athlete at 6'6". Certainly, he's someone who is going to go in that top 10-ish range. Is he going to go as high as 6 or 7 where the Blazers are? I don't know. In general, I think my theory of drafting is draft the best player available and don't worry about it. I think the Blazers are in a weird situation where they really kind of, if they do get one of the top 7 picks in the draft, they kind of need to draft someone who can contribute. Sharpe obviously wouldn't have a big minute role on this team when you think about Dame and Ant and Josh Hart, but I think he could be a 4th guard, and if he's good enough, you kind of figure it out. I don't know enough about him to say I wouldn't do it, but I do think that you have to think about fit more on this team than in general. My general belief is best player available, but I think the Blazers are in a weird situation where if they draft another guard to fill up that stable yet again, it's going to feel a little bit weird, and I can understand if you have have some concerns about that, which is perfect for why ESPN has them taking two guys who are kind of twos. Although this next one, Ochai Agbaji, 6'6" wing from Kansas, who's going to play in the Final Four this weekend. If you haven't seen Kansas play, check him out. He's darn good. A little bit older for draft stuff, like 22, as if that's like ancient in the draft world. But Ochai has he kind of recommitted himself to being an NBA guy and started working out with Phil Beckner, who's Damian Lillard's former collegiate assistant coach and now is like full-time trainer in the offseason, guy who's worked with a bunch of NBA dudes, including Anfernee Simons, but is Dame's guy. And so Ochai got in with Dame's guy, got in with Phil Beckner, and like started a relationship with Dame, and kind of about I read the story in The Athletic. I recommend you check it out. But it's like basically what it takes to work hard, what it takes to be a pro. And Dame was like a guy in his ear, and as an example of what that takes. Agbaji is probably like a 2-3, another 6'6" guy with not like this. He doesn't. I don't think he profiles as much as like the superstar kind of shoot off the dribble stuff as Sharpe. But he's the kind of like offensive, skilled maybe, and with some defensive upside wing that everybody's searching for, like at least what he might be. I don't know if he is there right now, but a two-way wing is what everyone's after, and at least he profiles like something he could be a two-way wing. That's ESPN's mock draft, but they're not alone. Brian Kalbrowski at USA Today, who's been a former guest on this podcast, and hopefully will be a future guest on this podcast here in the next couple weeks as we prepare for the draft, because Brian is really good over at USA Today, works for the Win and writes some other stuff, all draft stuff and NBA coverage, covers basketball at all levels, does a really good job. Check him out, Brian Kalbrowski. And he has the Blazers taking two players. One of them is AJ Griffin, 6'6" wing from Duke. I was talking to Kevin Pelton a little bit about AJ Griffin, KP, friend of the program, who's a former guest on the show and works for ESPN. And Pelton said that he thinks that Griffin could potentially grow into a frame to play a small ball 4 in the NBA. That means he could probably play 3 and 4 in the league at 6'6" with long arms. He shot almost 48%, 47+% from 3 at Duke. And I thought, came off the bench early in the year because he had some injury stuff, and because of the Duke's roster, like it's hard for them to. Trevor Keels and AJ Griffin are both NBA guys. Wendell Moore is probably an NBA guy. Like, there's just a logjam of people on the wing. Paolo Banchero, Mark Williams, NBA guys. Like, there's not always room to play all 5 potential first-round draft picks on that Duke roster. I think Griffin, from what I've watched of him, and he's one of the guys I've seen more than anyone else in college basketball. Not that I've seen him more than other people. I've seen AJ Griffin more than I've seen other college basketball players. I think he's going to be a really good pro. I'm a believer in him. That is Kalbrowski's first pick. And the second pick, assuming that they get that New Orleans selection, Shaedon Sharpe, he's going to be right in the Blazers' range. They're going to have to make a tough call. Not playing a year of college, I don't think should hurt. If you sit out, I don't think it should hurt you in terms of your draft stock. But I think in some ways, people fall in love with the unknown more than the known. I think he's in some ways protected himself and probably helped his draft stock. But if you're healthy and can play, I don't think sitting out and not playing a year of college basketball, it does not worry me even one little bit. The Ringer also recently released its draft coverage. That's Kevin O'Connor. Kevin does an extensive, like a really extensive draft package, for lack of a better word. It's big, and it's got scouting reports and a whole bunch of info on everybody. Really, really, for free, is about as good of a draft tool as you're going to find out there. He does a really, really good job. And O'Connor has the Blazers taking 2 players, and thank goodness they're not maybe shooting guards. The first one is Jalen Duren, 6'10" big man from Memphis. He's going to be a powerful center, kind of really, really good athlete, a little raw on offense, but high motor, physical bruiser. Jalen Duren is up there on my wish list. I have not finalized who I think my sort of Blazers targets are. When we get a little bit closer and we know where the Blazers are going to pick, I will finalize it. I'll tell you right here. We won't hide. I'm not going to hide from you. But Jalen Duren is high on my list just because of the motor and the athleticism. I watched him play 2 games now in college. He goes hard. Dude goes hard. And he's sort of the right frame. I think he could be a good backup in the league to begin with and grow into much, much more. Also, former guest of the show, Raphael Barlow, convinced me that Duren probably has some more passing chops than he has shown, and a big guy who can pass and plays hard. That is my type of player. So Jalen Duren high on my list for Blazers targets. And the last one from Kevin O'Connor is Jeremy Sochan, the 6'9" forward from Baylor. You may remember him from getting elbowed in the face during the Carolina game. that almost cost my beloved Tar Heels a chance to advance to the Elite Eight and then beyond to go Heels. But he's going to be right in the range. I think I've talked to some people who are big Sochan fans. 6'6" athlete who can shoot it a little bit at his size, probably guard multiple positions. Blazers desperately need dudes who can play 4. I think in terms of like reasonable fits, I think O'Connor's draft is better. I think Kevin O Draft Guide has got a little bit closer in terms of what the Blazers need. Are those the best players? Who knows? But I think those are more like need-based. These would fit plug and play type guys with Duren and Sochan. So that's your NBA. That's your mock draft roundup. As these come out, I'm not going to do these like every single week, but as these come out, we will look around the league and see where these folks are, and we'll do our best to get those who will join us on the program because I'm not a big draft guy, but we are going to dive deep into the NBA draft, and I'm going to dive deep there with you. I'll learn along right with you as we do it, and we will revisit mock drafts a bunch over the next 90 days. Let's come back, though, and look at the Blazers. This is a request from a listener. We're going to look at the Blazers' a brief history of Blazer draft picks to find out what they've done over the last decade and kind of give us a sense of how that team-building process has gone through the draft. But before we get there, I want to tell you about rockauto.com, the family business that's been specializing helping do-it-yourselfers for over 2 decades. You can save time and money if you shop rockauto.com. Time because the website's easy to use, quickly see all the parts, and I'm talking all the parts for every make and model, and money, like real money, 30, 50, or 100% more than if you go to a chain auto parts store, if you go to the car dealership. They can't meet your needs. They're just going to be more expensive. Rock Auto is going to be cheaper. It's going to be easier. It's going to be faster. So don't mess around. Go to their website, rockauto.com, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and while you're there, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That way they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliability, low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. We did your fastest recap in the West, your Blazers news, and your mock draft roundup. And now, courtesy of listener John Thorpe at Thorpe Theory on Twitter, former guest on this podcast when we did the Listener Summit, John asked if I would do a brief history of Trailblazers draft picks, just kind of looking back at the past. And I initially resisted it because I was like, it's like I don't want to have to click through all those things. Let's wait until it makes more sense. And I think when we're looking ahead to say like, okay, the Blazers are going to have like the 6th and the 9th pick in the draft, looking back at where they got good players kind of gives you a sense of what to expect. It's not perfect science. The draft is a crapshoot. It's really hard to get draft picks right. It doesn't matter where you draft. It's really hard to get them right. But typically, the best players go towards the top 5. And if you find a player who really contributes out of the top 5, boy, did you hit a home run. So let's revisit what the Blazers have done in the last decade to figure out kind of where they could be headed, or at least take a trip down memory lane. In 2012, you may remember with the 6th overall pick, they took a point guard from Weber State. They had traded Gerald Wallace to the New Jersey Nets in exchange for a draft pick that was top 3 protected. It fell out of the top 3 and landed 6th. The Kings took Thomas Robinson 5th. And the Blazers, who desperately needed a point guard, got a 6'2" point guard from Weber State. Turned out to be one of the best players in the history of the franchise. That's Damian Lillard, 6th overall in 2012. Blazers weren't done, though. They took Myers Leonard at 11 in that draft. I actually don't think, looking back at this, that Myers Leonard was really that bad of a pick. Like, I know he wasn't good in the NBA. I do not think Myers Leonard was ever a good player. I think he was briefly an intriguing player for his skill set, but never good. Never quite passed the threshold of good NBA player. But like in the first round of like reasonable picks, like I think if you say like, oh, they could have, like the one is always like, why didn't they draft Draymond Green? It's like, come on, the Warriors drafted 2 players before Draymond Green in that draft. It's like they didn't know. They didn't know. If they knew they wouldn't have waited until 35. Same with Nikola Jokic. The Nuggets drafted Jusuf Nurkic 15th in that draft. They didn't know. But it's like, if you look sort of in the range, I think it's fair. And sort of in Myers' range, that would have been better. Evan Fournier went 20. Mo Harkless went 15. Either of those would have been better picks. Straight up, both of those dudes have had much better NBA careers than than Mr. Leonard. And with the 40th overall pick, the Blazers got Will Barton. Getting an NBA player in the second round is really hard to do. The Blazers have had a bunch of success finding guys who are NBA level players in the second round, and Will Barton in 2012 was the beginning of that. The following year, back-to-back bangers. Blazers get the 10th pick in the draft. You know, they were pretty good most of that season. They ended the year on a 13-game losing streak, and they end up with the 10th pick in the draft. It's kind of not too dissimilar from where they are now, where it's like, okay, pull the plug, and when they pulled the plug, they've just lost a whole bunch of games. Ended up with a late lottery pick. And with that late lottery pick, they got a little guard out of Lehigh University who had just coming off an injury his senior year of college and was maybe would have been a higher draft pick if not for the foot stuff. CJ McCollum from Lehigh. It's Christian James, one of a really great pick. Blazers obviously could have drafted Giannis Antetokounmpo at 15, who went 15th. That would have been the time to take a big risk. That was a really good team that didn't necessarily need the CJ pick, but it's hard to quibble with CJ, really. Like, yes, you could have picked Giannis Antetokounmpo for sure in 2013, but come on now. Come on now. CJ was pretty good. Would they be better off with Damian and Giannis over the last decade? Yes. Championship level team for a long time, but that's not how it works. Like I said, the draft is a crapshoot. That's after the Blazers selected 4 other teams also chose not to, plus the first 10 in that draft. So say 14 other teams didn't get it right. That's half the league. In 2014, the Blazers, they had actually traded away part of that Gerald Wallace and subsequent swap. They had traded away that future draft pick. They did not have a first rounder in 2014. Blazers also in 2013, they also made a second round selection that they eventually traded away in Jeff Withey for the Rolo pick. So that's a pick. He didn't play, so I didn't count him, but he's in my notes. 2015, the Blazers come back. They do have a draft pick this time, and they draft Rondae Hollis Jefferson from Arizona, forward from Arizona who had not much of an offensive game and a funky free throw routine, who did not end up playing for the Blazers. They traded that pick on draft night for Mason Plumlee and Pat Connaughton, but Pat Connaughton they traded for his rights. Like, he was another Blazer selection. It's again an NBA player in the second round. Pretty good pick right there. That's your 2015 draft. The next year in 2016, the Blazers did not have their pick in 2016. They had traded in the They had traded it away in the previous draft in a previous trade, so they only had a second round pick, and they took Jake Layman at 47 due to turn like he's an end of the bench guy for Minnesota, and he's probably on the borderline of having another NBA contract. But he signed a second NBA contract in the league. He got real money after his rookie deal. After his rookie deal expired. So, finding NBA players with second-round picks, pretty good in 2016. 2017, this is the big one. This is the one you remember. With the 10th pick in the NBA draft, the 2017 NBA draft, the Blazers took Zach Collins from Gonzaga. Didn't work out. A pick that really cost them. They also, in this draft, took Caleb Swanigan at 26, pick right before Kyle Kuzma and blah, blah, blah. And the Zach Collins pick, Donovan Mitchell went 13th. Bam Adebayo went 14th. John Collins went 19th. Jared Allen went 22nd. OG Anunoby went 23rd. 5 players, all if they'd been taken 10th, the Blazers would be in a better situation. And I think 2 things. I think very earnestly 2 things about this. One, that draft screwed the Blazers. It screwed that era of the Blazers because Collins got hurt too much and it didn't work out for him. Also, Donovan Mitchell went 13. 12 other teams didn't know that he was a star. Bam Adebayo went 14th. It's not like the Blazers picked first and missed out or third and missed out. This was late lottery stuff. This stuff is hard. I think it's hard to get it right. I'm only defending that I think the entire process of a draft is a crapshoot while recognizing the 2017 draft screwed up the Blazers. It screwed up the Blazers. It pushed them into the situation where they are now, totally rebuilding, because they could have landed a star in that draft. You draft Bam Adebayo, you're not blowing it up. You're pushing it forward as a team that has legitimate championship aspirations. They screwed up. 2017, they screwed it up in a way that is very believable because the draft is a crapshoot. In 2018, the Blazers drafted Anfernee Simons at 24 and Gary Trent Jr. at 37. That's a hell of a draft haul. And it took a little while to get going, was probably thrust into the spotlight too much, but now he looks like he's just going to be a straight-up star in the league. And Gary Trent Jr. is a starting caliber shooting guard, is an absolute bucket when he's on. He's always thinks he's on, so sometimes he's really off, but Few dudes in the league can get as hot and be on a heater like Gary Trent. That's a great draft in 2018. 2019, the Blazers took Nasir Little, 25th. That's looking like a really good pick. I think Nas has a chance to be a long-term starter in the NBA. You pick a long-term starter at 25, that's a damn good selection. No guarantees. Obviously, Nas has got to stay healthy for an extended period of time, but I thought he was really putting it together this year before he hurt his shoulder. And you draft a dude who can play like a contributor at 25. The chances you draft any contributor in any draft, like beyond the top 6 picks, is relatively low. Beyond the top 15 picks, incredibly low. In the final 10 picks of the first round, very unlikely in the second round, basically impossible. And the Blazers getting maybe a starter at 25. Heck of a pick. In 2020, they didn't have a draft pick. They traded for the first of their 2 draft picks they traded in the Robert Covington trade. They took CJ Elleby 46. I'm not sure CJ Elleby's an NBA player. He's had a lot of opportunities in the Blazers' late season tank, and it just hasn't worked out for him. They took him 46 overall. In 2021, they took Greg Brown III, 43rd overall. They didn't have a first-round pick for the second of the 2 draft picks the Blazers traded away for the Robert Covington trade. That's who they've taken. So over the last 10 years, the Blazers have taken a Hall of Famer and no one else who has made an all-star team. CJ McCollum is about as good as you can possibly be without making an all-star team, but a Hall of Famer, a long-term starter, and one of the top 15 players in franchise history, and then probably a long-term starter in Anfernee Simons and a long-term starter in Nasir Little, and then a bunch of rotation guys. I will just say, going through this list, they don't have a lot of duds. I think Myers Leonard was there weren't a lot of good players in the back half of that draft. So you could have gotten a slightly better player. Zach Collins it's hard to know with Collins because of the injury stuff. And I don't like calling guys a bust because of their body. Like it's one, I think busts are guys who aren't skilled enough to play in the league. I don't think busts are guys who get injured. That should be a different category. Did he get injured? And yes, absolutely. And it cost him all these things. No doubt about it. But there needs to be we need another word for a guy whose body sort of just didn't hold up in the NBA, because that's not what a bust is. A bust is a player who can't play. I think Collins is kind of fine. Like I think he's going to be a contributor in the league. He's not all the other guys who were picked in his range who are like studs though, and that's the real problem. Like I said, I don't think the Blazers have many duds in the last 10 years. I think they've done fine, and I think if you can get a rotation level player, particularly someone who can contribute, end of year 1 and in year 2, and Collins, quite frankly, contributed at a pretty high level in his second season. They do not make the Western Conference Finals without Zach Collins' play in the last 2 games of that series against the Nuggets. He was really, really useful off the bench for a team that needed front court depth, and then he got injured, didn't give them depth beyond that after that run. But if the Blazers get the 7th pick in the draft and draft a guy who's like a long-term contributor, that's a really good outcome. I don't think you can slice it any other way. If this works out, if they kind of follow the trend they have the last couple of years where they draft people who can contribute at any level, you get someone at 7. Like the Blazers need someone who can play early on in their career. They do not need a project. They do not need a Greg Brown III. It's different because he can be 43rd overall or whatever. But they don't even need Ant, right? Like they don't need an Ant who's someone who's going to take a full 4 years and then blossom. They don't need someone who's good in 2029. They need someone who can play right away. They need someone who's good in 2023. That's absolutely what they need. My math might be a little bit off on what 4 years is from 2023. But I think they've got a pretty good track record. And the guy who's running the show now, Joe Cronin, has been the director of player personnel and someone who's big in the scouting world and the draft world, helping make those decisions for the last 10 years. There's reason to believe the Blazers are probably still a pretty solid draft team, or at least have the competency of the front office makeup that has done it in the past, even if they've got some new parts in there as well. So that's your look to the past. We look to the future, and we talked about the present. We're going to do more tomorrow. Tomorrow's show, Mark Schindler is going to join the program, writer for basketballnews.com and a couple other places, host of the Premium Hoops podcast at premiumhoops.org. Mark's a ton of fun. Make sure you listen to that one. We'll talk about CJ's return in Thursday's show, and we'll do a mailbag to close out the week on Friday. Whole bunch of fun this week. Available on all platforms, wherever you get podcasts. Also on YouTube, just search Locked On Blazers. We'll be right there waiting for you. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.